Hi everyone, this is Sketchman Boris. Welcome to another video of Sketchman Draws. Um, Today we're going to look at uh, Dark Knight by Paul Dini, illustrated by Eduardo Risso, published by Vertigo Comics when they used to be in business. And this is, I wanted to do this for a long time, but I just couldn't find the time to do it. So this is a really beautiful story. I mean, it's based on tragedy, but I'm just a sucker for someone who goes through something horrible and then they recover from it, and especially with the power of story, right? And like a character as like Batman. I just had to get something to drink. So because I know that I'm going to get choked up with the story. So let's get started. This story is actually based on, um, well, it's not a story based on, but it's actually Paul Dini explaining, um, like, you know, uh, like what really happened to him. He got mugged, but we'll get to there. So, and I really love this because, like as a creative person, like I aspire to be storyteller. I mean, mainly a comic book artist, but still a storyteller. I love writing. Um, I love movies. I love, one day I hope I'll make a movie. One day I hope I'll write a story. I've illustrated my own stories before. I hope one of my comic books get published with my art in it. Um, and you ask yourself, like, when all this is going on, like, like, I mean, we're living through a pandemic now, and you ask yourself, like, what's the point of art, right? Like, what am I contributing to society? And a lot of people have shared their own thing, and people might say, oh, as an artist, you might be biased because you think your work is always important because otherwise you have to justify what you do. But I really think there is something really amazing about spending a few minutes, even if it's the 2 hours with in a world with characters, and you just forget about the problems. And it's not like forgetting like as a matter of a distraction. Like if you're a really thoughtful and mindful person, you kind of come out of that experience. If it's a good experience, of course, if it's a really well told story, whether it's comics or movies or like even music, um, you will find something there. Like um, either if you're a creative, you'll just find encouragement, you'll find maybe the motivation even through jealousy, and I've experienced that a lot of times. So story starts, like the Paul Dini, he talks about his childhood, and he just described himself as, and I love Eduardo Risso's art. Like there's nothing to say here. Like it's amazing. Um, I love the colors, how they switch between like different moods. Um, and he's basically telling like a very cliche story that we've all heard, which is like the kid who was very shy, who was picked on and bullied, but found solace in imaginary characters, cartoons, comics, movies, and that's how he coped with. He wasn't doing pretty well. He wasn't doing well in school, but he was. His parents and his family was always encouraging him to do what he loved. And since a child, he would always go to therapists, um, and and this is hard to explain. Like people would think we're mad, but actually, creative people. I think everybody does that. Like everybody talks to themselves inside their head, right? I mean, now I'm talking to a camera, hoping that someone on the other side listens. But there is this part of like we just create a voice in our head and we call it a voice. Like my voice sometimes like talks to me, jokes with me, jokes about me, jokes with me, or like there are other things and things come out of that, like comic strips that I do. And so for him, he just says like those voices like are characters that I grew up with or characters that I've written for, and so on. So he talks about so he goes very quick because it's not the whole point of the story. He's not telling his life story, but he's just telling how storytelling saved his life. And I'm not going to read it because you have to read it to exactly feel. Um, First of all, you care for Paul. I mean, Paul is a real person, and seems to be a really nice guy. He's given joy to like, including me, like people who love Batman as a character by writing him in such a thoughtful way. And there's no secret, like Batman the Animated Series is the best version of Batman outside of comics. Even in comics, like most of the time they get it wrong. And he sort of explains it why through this story, and it's really great. So, so he kind of depicts his colleagues, including Alan Burnett, and he actually says, like, Alan Burnett is not as bad as he depicts him in his stories. So here, this like he takes, and Eduardo Risso is like stretching his muscles. He's drawing cartoony. He's drawing like Looney Tune style. He's drawing like comic style, realistic style, and he's amazing. And of course, like Roadrunner, it basically depicts the way he approached relationships. He would just always go for like attractive actresses that didn't really care about him, and so he would also he was a loner. Like he was spending like he had animation styles, he had figurines, he had video games, he had money, he had everything. He bought all the toys he wanted, but he still felt lonely. And he would also explain like um, like the sessions between with the therapist. So this is the session before the event that will happen. So he goes to dinner with again another actress that doesn't really is not really interested in him. Okay, let me take a yeah. Okay, keep yourself hydrated. um, she's not really interested in him, and she's only interested in meeting Steven Spielberg, which he has worked with when he was one of the writers for Tiny Toons, because Steven Spielberg was a fan of animation and he wanted to do that show. And each of these stages, you'll see different characters from the Batman universe. Of course, he meets first Bruce Wayne when, and it's like it's really clear that she's not really into him, right? So, and he just finds out that she thinks of him as a friend, and Joker makes his appearance and makes fun of him. Even Ivy comes in. And this is when they go out, and as you can see, the color change. And he just walks another way, and she says, "Why are you walking that way?" He's just like, "Oh, I just thought, you know." So actually, he's just thinking like, "I just walked that way because I wanted to make her jealous and think that I'm seeing other people." And he said that was so stupid because that's what got him in trouble. So he came across these two guys who, I mean, they just beat him up, and um, it's really horrifying. I mean, of course, it's when you see it written like this, and um, but to think that this actually really happened to him, you know, and this could happen to anyone, right? And he kind of so they beat him. I mean, his face is mushed in, and like he says that bones are broken on his face. But he manages to get up. He go and he gets scared for a moment. They threaten him they're going to shoot him, and he just coils and he thinks about his family. It's so heartbreaking. And then finally they leave him, so he goes home. He's bleeding, and he just washes him up. Calls the police. The police though seem to not to really care, and they make fun of him. Like, what do you do? And he says, "Oh, right, Batman. Oh, you could have used him tonight," and blah blah. And and that hits him. Like, so he calls girlfriend, and she doesn't. She just listens to him and starts telling him about her story, and he just like hangs and calls Arlen Sorkin, who plays Harley Quinn, who is the inspiration for Harley Quinn, actually, a character created by Paul Dini, now loved. Um, and he has the. So first of all, of course, what anybody would do in that situation if they knew Batman, or you fantasize and you think, how could it have gone if Batman was there? And this is his version in the head. Of course, that didn't happen. So when he looks into the mirror and he confronts Two-Face, and I really love like the way. This is why Batman characters, including the villains especially, right, are so because they're related to the primal emotions. Like if you take like Scarecrow, obviously fear, right? Like the Two-Face, like the duality in our personalities. Like Joker, like our like there's a one point where he says like like for writers, Joker, and I really love that, is a permission for writers and creators to go to their darkest places, and it's true. So Arlene comes in, she's very nice, and she brings him to, and he goes to the hospital, and so the doctor gives him the diagnosis. Um, and all through all this, what's going on is that they're writing actually Mask of Phantasm actually. So they've already started um, um the broadcasting Batman the animated series, and it's been really getting great reviews. And he's kind of like, I don't see the point anymore of writing Batman. I mean, why bother, right? And so he just um, and there's this heartbreaking moment when, I mean, I just skipped it. I'm sorry to do that, but yeah, yeah. And he says, but what hurt the most was knowing that when I finally reached home, no one would be there to say, "Oh my God," right? Like, so there was no one there to actually even react to that. And um, he's laying in the hospital, and this is very personal to me. And when I was in Germany, it was New Year and Christmas time, so I didn't want to bother my my colleagues, because my colleagues were my friends, so my friends and colleagues, because they were with their family, they were on holiday, and it's a Christmas holidays, right? Christmas and New Year holiday. And I don't want to go into details, but I had to stay in the hospital for 7 days for tests and so on. And I kind of, yeah, I was just lonely. And then later on I called my mom, but I was very careful, like, not to scare her, because I don't want to scare my mom. But then, yeah, like those moments, like, were really changed, like life changing for me. Like, so yeah. And it's just because before he goes to surgery, I mean, Poison Ivy actually tells him, like, this is what she was thinking. She didn't really care about you. She just wanted, she was a young up and coming actress who wanted to know someone famous, so that she can get roles. And yeah. And this is, I don't know, I mean, again, I don't know if he really did this. Like, when he won the Emmy, he just cut himself with the Emmy. I mean, I don't think if he hadn't done this, I don't think they would have put it in a comic. But again, I don't know. So when I saw it realistic, like this is what I mean, like the without any like black line art. The sister comes in, and like so they and it's still going, and he's like slacking off. He's playing video games. He's not working on the mask of the phantasm. He's not, and Joker is like, oh, just stay. Like you don't have to do anything. You have the video games. You have food delivered at home. You don't even need to go out. And Batman is like, you need to stop this. You need to work. Go back to work. And then Paul even goes to buy a gun, and he actually shoots at the tries it, but then he just remembers a memory that he had when he was a kid. He had they went hunting, and he had a rifle, and he was trying to shoot at a duck, and suddenly his brother's head appeared in front, and that scared him. Like he would imagine what would have happened if he had taken a shot. So um, it's like so, and Penguin makes an appearance when he goes drinking because the partying, that scene, and so now he has two choices. He can go what Batman says, which is go back to work, and then this is finally what happens, right? What changes his mind? He goes to a record store with his sister, and the guy at the store says like, "Hey," like because he's wearing a WB jacket. Just like, do you work at the WB? Do you work on Tiny Toons? He said, yeah, I work on Tiny Toons. And she said, like, my wife has had cancer, and we would laugh watching those cartoons. They gave us a good time. And then he's like, and then he understands, like, yeah, their work does matter. And I love this part. Like, he's trying to write again his part and he's watching the famous monologue by Joker from the Batman animated series episode, where Joker realizes that Batman is dead, and he just says like what he feels. He's sad, and he talks about a story that he wanted in the animated episode, but they wouldn't allow it because they don't want a character called Death, created by Neil Gaiman on the story. But it's a story basically reflecting Paul's situation, like how he felt, very metaphysical and philosophical in that moment. And Batman had to make choice between two things, which is between Morpheus, who can wake him up. He's bleeding basically, and he's like half asleep, half awake, or die and succumb to death's and accept death's invitation. So of course Batman chooses to live, and Robin comes to save him. And after this, like Paul says, like so just because, and I really love this, and he decides, of course, to go back to writing. And this is why Batman doesn't work in like live action, because he's a voice, right? Just like his villains, I guess, a voice, like like the fear, madness, darkness, in Joker, and that's that's what Batman means. Like that's why he's like this, like that's why Joker is a force of nature, like, and Batman is also a force of nature. So that's why I think he works better in comics and animation than in live action, in my opinion. He has a lasting. He never ages. Um, that's what I want to say. So yeah, so just to show, like, again, I'm probably talking to myself, but um, and people might say, "Oh, you're just making a stretch. You're making unnecessary connections between your personal events," and usually that's what art does. But you're making unnecessary connections, like, and it's a stretch, right? And I was thinking about this, and I was like, yes, it's a stretch, but so is compassion. Like, if you think about it, like, um, you trying to imagine yourself in someone else's shoes is fiction in a way. Is imagination, requires imagination. So compassion requires imagination. And this one, that's why I wanted to name this video cathartic, because it was cathartic for me. So thank you for watching, and thank you for sharing this with me. I hope you enjoyed these videos, and I'll see you next time. This is Sketchman Boris signing off.